Hello, I just want to let you know if you are interested in having a personal reading, I am still doing those. So for more information, you can always check out my website at manic.mercurian.net, or you can reach out to me directly at manic.mercurian@gmail.com, and I'll link that information pretty much everywhere. I'll put it in the description and the comments, maybe above as well for your convenience. Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, February 6th through Sunday, February 12th, 2023. This week, I think the main theme is just we are very much moving forward. This is something I talked about last week, how we have all the planets direct. That definitely continues this week. But we get another layer of that this week because Mercury will leave its post shadow on Tuesday, February 7th. I think this is something that's not often talked about in astrology. This basically just means that Mercury is finally leaving the area that it went retrograde over. So Mercury's been direct, it's been moving forward, but it has still been going over the area that it previously went retrograde over, if that makes sense. So this basically means that we've still been dealing with the same themes that we were during Mercury retrograde, just in a much more productive, forward moving type of way. But that basically comes to an end this week as Mercury leaves that post shadow area and enters truly new territory. So this basically means we are entering new territory. We're entering a time and space where we can access information that is completely new, much more so than during this whole Mercury retrograde process and, the Mercury post shadow period that followed. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll talk more about it for, Tuesday's spiel, I guess you could say. I'll talk more about that when we get there. But other than that, right after Mercury leaves the post shadow, Mercury will enter Aquarius this week as well. That's the only planetary ingression we have. So this also indicates moving forward. Aquarius is such a forward, futuristic oriented sign. So with Mercury entering Aquarius, this means that that's the way that our thinking will go and our communication. We're focused on goals, aspirations, the future, also complex concepts. We're thinking a little bit more holistically right now once Mercury enters Aquarius, that is. So all this is basically saying, this new energy, going into this new kind of territory that, these are all themes that have been happening since last week, but all of that I think becomes even stronger going into this week, basically. That's the main theme that I see. Other than that, we're still coming off of that full moon in Leo that we just had on Sunday of last week. So we're still kind of riding that high as we start out the week. And throughout this week here, moon will be waning from Leo to Scorpio. So that is, definitely a huge shift. We won't quite get the third quarter moon this week yet. It will actually happen Monday of next week. Okay, but without further ado, let's get into the day by day forecast here. So we start out Monday, February 6th with the moon still in Leo for the first half of the day. In kind of like mid-afternoon Eastern Standard Time, moon will leave Leo and enter Virgo. So of course that's a huge shift. Moon is still looking pretty full at this point. It's still got a lot of light, but it's not, it's not exactly full. Like it was on Sunday. So basically we're still kind of riding out that high, like I said, the high energy, the high activity. The full moon in Leo was very potent, as I described in the last forecast. So that energy doesn't just immediately dissipate. It's still kind of ruminating in the air. I don't know if I even used that word correctly, but we're still definitely feeling that. But things do start to cool down kind of dramatically when moon enters Virgo, halfway through the day or so. Virgo is just a much more kind of heavy and grounded energy. And combining moon and Virgo with sun and Aquarius, both of these signs are very intellectual, they're very rational, they're focused on learning, they both want to be very objective. So that is suddenly more so the focus, in the latter half of the day on Monday. So I think this is a very productive type of energy for a Monday, and again, we still have that high energy from the full moon. It is dissipating, but we still have that energy available to us. So I think this would be a great day for being productive. It looks like a great Monday type of day. The only downside I could see to this is that Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Virgo, these energies can be a little bit more cold or detached. So especially for more emotional or sensitive type of personalities, this energy could be a little bit of a rude awakening, so to speak, or it could be a little bit discomforting. But if you are just focused on being productive, getting organized, learning, working, things of that nature, I think those will come easily on Monday. We do have one aspect. Mercury will sextile Neptune today. So Mercury at 23 degrees Capricorn makes a waning sextile to Neptune at 23 degrees Pisces. So this is kind of interesting. Sextiles are always harmonious. They're not overwhelmingly strong, but we do get that little kind of boost of harmonious energy. And with this one, Neptune and Pisces, Mercury and Capricorn, I think it's interesting how we're combining two energies that are very different, but they do actually combine very easily or naturally. Neptune and Pisces, which is all about fantasy and illusion and creativity, spirituality. It's more about melting things. There's no structure with Neptune and Pisces. But we're combining that with Mercury and Capricorn, which is all about structure. It's all about getting real, getting realistic. What are our goals? Mercury and Capricorn really isn't concerned with feelings. It's more concerned with, what are the facts? What can we do? Let's be realistic. Let's be responsible. And there's definitely a very kind of stern practicality, I think, with Mercury and Capricorn. So combining these, it may seem like these energies wouldn't combine naturally, but they actually do. I think combining, through this aspect, I think this gives us a really good opportunity for accessing some great common sense, some wisdom, because we have two of the different sides of wisdom, basically. We have the practical, physical side with Mercury and Capricorn, but also the spiritual wisdom, the emotional wisdom with Neptune and Pisces. So this could be a really great day for being realistic and maybe coming up with some goals or thinking about the future in some kind of way. Or just having a really kind of grounded outlook on things. Even if these issues may be very complex, spiritual, metaphysical, nuanced, I think this aspect gives you a better chance of having a really grounded and well-rounded perspective, if that makes sense. Especially for people who have strong placements around 23 degrees Capricorn or Pisces. So all in all, looks like a kind of well-rounded day, like a kind of typical Monday, I think. Let's go forward to Tuesday, February 7th. So we still have Moon in Virgo with Sun in Aquarius today. So still kind of, similar vibes that were established late in the day on Monday. Still really great for getting organized, being productive, learning anything intellectual in nature. All of that is definitely in the cards for today. As I mentioned in the intro, Mercury does leave its post shadow today. So I think that's exciting. I definitely like to point out the positive aspects of the whole Mercury retrograde cycle, but it is always exciting when Mercury retrograde ends. And Mercury retrograde it's been over, but like I said in the intro, we've still been traversing the same kind of territory. Mercury has still had to go back over the area that it already went backward over in space from our perception, if that makes sense. So again, that means that since Mercury stationed direct, we've still been basically tying up loose ends, moving forward, applying the extra insight that we gained during Mercury retrograde, or in other words, as I always say, we've still been dealing with the same themes we were during Mercury retrograde, but just in a much more productive, forward-moving type of way. So this changes on Tuesday, where Mercury finishes up traveling through that area it went backward over. In other words, you could say it as Mercury reaches 24 degrees Capricorn today. So that is the same degree that it turned retrograde over, like quite a few weeks ago now. So this basically means we're entering truly new territory now, new information, communicating about new things, dealing with new things in our lives. Things become much more interesting. You're more kind of on the frontier with Mercury direct out of the shadow zone, so to speak. So definitely exciting stuff. Going forward to Wednesday, February 8th, Moon continues on through Virgo still. So still Virgo and Aquarius are the two main signs. That's where the luminaries are. So these are very different energies, but they're also Aquarius can be very conservative, I think. Modern astrologers say that Aquarius is all about being radical and experimental, and it definitely is, but there is a two-sided nature to it. Aquarius is also equally, or maybe even more so, very kind of strict, conservative, practical. There's a side of Aquarius that doesn't like to take risks. And so combining that with Moon and Virgo, this is very practical energy. It's very detached and intellectual. It wants to make everything correct, if that makes sense. It's about fixing things. It's about efficiency. So that's really the focus for really the whole start to this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Wednesday, we do have one aspect. So Venus is at 15 degrees Pisces. It sextiles Uranus at 15 degrees Taurus. I do think this is especially interesting because Uranus in Taurus, it's been in Taurus since 2018. And since that time, our economy has been very volatile, as one would expect. I think any astrologer could pretty much predict that Uranus in Taurus from 2018 to 2026, Uranus makes things volatile and unpredictable, and Taurus represents money, goods and services, stocks, investments, things of that nature. So on the one hand, we have Uranus bringing instability to our finances and our investments, and now we have this aspect from Venus, and Venus also has to do with money. Venus has to do with pleasure, enjoyment, what makes life worth living, basically. So much of that does have to do with money and material goods. Venus also has to do with, love and aesthetics, things of that nature. But I think Venus, probably more than any other planet in astrology, can give you a good idea of the state of your finances and money. Everyone wants to know about, money, among other things. So basically, Uranus and Taurus, changing economy and finances, being aspected by Venus, which symbolizes economy and finances. This looks very financial to me. It looks good, though. It looks positive. Sextiles, like we just talked about, sextiles are harmonious. These energies are cooperating. They're working together. Plus, Venus is exalted in Pisces. This basically means you could say Venus is stronger in Pisces than it is in any other sign. So, in other words, we have our best shot at getting that pleasure, that desire, that love, appreciating aesthetics. We have the best shot at, having a good relationship with our money and our relationships when Venus is in Pisces. That's one way of looking at it. So, combining that with Uranus and Taurus, that does bring about some instability or some volatility, something unexpected. But the nature of this does look favorable, though. So maybe, I don't know, dare I say, maybe an unexpected surprise. Or, a lot of this has to do with perception, too, because Uranus changes our perception, and Venus is in Pisces, which is all about perception, I guess. So this could have to do with, maybe it's not literally your financial situation that is changing. Maybe it's just how you're looking at it. You're looking at it in a more positive way, realizing that there's some untapped potential. A lot of this could apply more to society as well, since Uranus is an outer planet. It has more to do with the big picture. So it could be, entire groups of people or demographics or the whole world, maybe just looking at things a different way, or, I don't know, utilizing resources in a new way or a different way. Something like that. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that was a little bit abstract, I guess you could say. But yes, maybe some good news financially and with our relationships. And other than that, we still kind of continue this practical, organized Virgo moon influence that we have for this week. For Thursday, February 9th, moon will leave Virgo and enter Libra. You can see here noon Eastern Standard Time, moon is already at 4 degrees Libra. So I think this is generally good news. Moon in Virgo, I'm definitely not saying anything bad about that. But moon in Libra is very nice, especially because this combines very well with Sun and Aquarius. We're not close to the moon trining the Sun quite yet, but moon is at least trining the Sun by sign. In other words, Sun is in Aquarius, moon is in Libra. Both of these are air signs. They both blend together very naturally. And then moon is still losing light each day, each night, or whatever. So at this point in the lunar cycle, things become a little bit more relaxed, more stable, more harmonious, more fun. There's more of kind of a good mood, energy, good vibes when the moon approaches trining the sun, if that makes sense. So we're still not quite there yet to that aspect, but it's at least, this energy is kind of emerging on Thursday. Plus, with the moon in an air sign, air energy is very detached. Having sun and moon in air signs, we can be more detached, more still very intellectual, like Virgo. But the difference is we're more interested in people and we're more open to change. We're more flexible, more spontaneous. Air signs aren't really attached to anything very much. They're detached. They can go this way or that way. They have multiple sides to their nature. In some ways, Virgo, with the moon in Virgo the past few days, Virgo is a little bit like that, but Virgo's very heavy energy though. It's a little bit more dedicated or more attached to what it's doing. It's more focused. With moon in Libra now, we can be a little bit more playful or spontaneous. Air signs can be a little bit experimental. Moon in Libra though is more focused on balance though, finding balance with things. So anyway, I do think this kind of makes things a little bit more upbeat. It kind of brings up the mood a little bit as the moon enters Libra. For Friday, February 10th, moon continues through Libra, of course. We're still getting closer to that trine that the moon will make to the sun. You'll basically be feeling that today on Friday. Looks like it'll be exact either very late Friday or very early Saturday. So for the sake of simplicity, let's just say that the moon is basically trining the sun Friday and Saturday, I would say. I like to give wide orbs for lunar aspects since the moon travels so quickly. So basically what that means for you is, good vibes. Everyone just kind of seems like they're in a good mood, generally speaking, when the moon and the sun are trining one another. This is because the trine is the most harmonious aspect. It's the easiest aspect. In other words, these energies are the easiest to combine when they are trining. They're energies that are slightly different, but they have enough in common that they're fundamentally very similar. So sun in Aquarius, moon in Libra, like we talked about for Thursday, both of these energies are air. They're both very intellectual. They both are focused on learning. They're both interested in people and ideas. So that is the focus that was established Thursday, but it gets stronger on Friday as the moon moves into that trine with the sun. And this is just, it's stable, good mood energy. I think we could have really fun and interesting conversations today. Pretty much just that. I think I covered it. Other than that, for Friday, Mercury does cross over Pluto. So you can see here, it's pretty much right on the dot exact at noon Eastern Standard Time, Mercury and Pluto at 28 degrees Capricorn. So this is a little bit of a different energy for sure than what I just described. This is very heavy for sure. Mercury is still in Capricorn. It's almost out of there though, but still in Capricorn. So we're still thinking in very kind of goal-oriented ways, being very practical, thinking about the future, investing in the future. Now with Mercury crossing over Pluto, this brings a very dark energy. I wouldn't say Pluto is like evil by any means, but it is definitely dark energy. It has to do with insecurities, fears, paranoia. It's not just paranoia though. It could be very, very grounded fears, very realistic fears. But whenever we conjure up Plutonian energy or channel that Plutonian energy, it basically brings up some very dark aspects of our natures that can no longer be submerged. Pluto rules the underworld, so this brings about things that are sort of in your underworld, in your subconscious. So what have you been kind of pushing down or not dealing with? Are there any kind of fears, insecurities, problems that up until now you've been able to just keep in the background, but on Friday those things may demand your attention. So basically, although this is dark, it's heavy, it's not fun by any means, by addressing and confronting those insecurities or fears, you can deal with them. You can shine the light into the darkness, illuminate the darkness, become more conscious, and move on. You can even use what maybe what once was a fear or insecurity, if you address it, it transforms that issue, and then it can actually become a strength, basically. So definitely not fun stuff to go through, but this can be very useful and very important, if that makes sense. So Friday looks interesting. On the one hand, Sun and Moon trining, really good, easy energies. But Mercury crossing over Pluto, bringing up some dark stuff as well. Both will be true for Friday. Both are in the picture, I guess. All right, Saturday, February 11th. I think it's kind of interesting that pretty much right after Mercury conjoins Pluto on Friday, we just go forward 24 hours later and Mercury's already at 0 degrees Aquarius. So this definitely changes things. This changes our intellectual energy, the rhythm of things, the style of communication that we have. All of that continues to be very kind of goal focused and focused on the future. It tends to be, kind of objective or detached, and definitely not very emotional, if that makes sense. In other words, like Mercury and Aquarius, in many ways, is a similar energy to Mercury and Capricorn. Both Capricorn and Aquarius are ruled by Saturn. They both are kind of wintry signs in the northern hemisphere. They're both focused on the future. They're both detached. They're both goal-oriented. The difference is now Mercury's in Aquarius, which is an air sign, so things get a little bit lighter. We have more room to breathe and to try different things. There is that experimental nature to Aquarius as well. So we're still focused on the future, but in a more abstract or experimental type of way. Also, we can communicate a little bit more loosely or more freely with Mercury and Aquarius as well. Okay, and you can see here, it'll be just after noon Eastern Standard Time when Moon leaves Libra and enters Scorpio. So that, of course, is a huge shift for sure. For one, because Scorpio is a very different sign than Libra. Scorpio is one of the most emotional signs, and I'd say Libra is one of the least emotional. And because Moon represents our kind of collective emotion or feeling, all of that does become intensified with the Moon entering Scorpio. It also becomes intensified, though, because the aspect that the Moon makes with the Sun is now changing. We're stepping into what will be a third quarter moon. We're not going to talk about that for this week because it happens on Monday, I believe. But we can already begin to experience that even on Saturday because the Moon is in Scorpio, where it will make that square aspect with the Sun. So now, what was a very harmonious, stable, kind of easy mood or vibe that we were experiencing collectively, that is changing to become a little bit more contentious, more restless, more anxious. The energy now is more suitable for change, basically. Scorpio is all about change too, so I think this works pretty well. Also, another way we can look at this is we're combining Sun and Aquarius with Moon and Scorpio. I've heard of this square referred to as the most sexual dynamic you can have in astrology. I'm not sure exactly why, but I do think there's some truth to that. Sun and Aquarius, which is can be experimental and radical as well as conservative. But combining that with Moon and Scorpio, which is so deeply emotional and passionate, this is a very interesting square, I think. Both Aquarius and Scorpio have to do with countercultures and, I don't know, the underdog, the minority, so to speak. They have to do with things that are viewed as weird or unusual. So yeah, very kind of interesting stuff. I'm hoping that by painting the picture of these different themes that go on with these energies, that you'll kind of understand what you'll be experiencing during these days, if that makes sense. Other than that, for Saturday, there is one aspect. Mars will sextile Chiron. When I was making my notes for this video, I saw that aspect and I was already thinking, like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with that energy. Not that I don't understand it, it's just, it's a weird one. So Mars at 13 degrees Gemini, sextiling Chiron at 13 degrees Aries. It's also interesting because Mars rules over Aries. So in other words, Mars rules Chiron in this aspect. So Mars is the boss. Mars tells Chiron what to do, so to speak. If you listen to my forecast, you've probably already heard my spiel about Chiron and Aries. Chiron, just like Uranus, Chiron entered Aries in 2018, just like Uranus entered Taurus in 2018. But Chiron's influence, basically, you can see that with how easily triggered and offended everyone has been since 2018. And I don't want to, I feel like even talking about that can be controversial. I don't want to offend anyone, or I don't want to be on this side or that side of anything when I'm doing these forecasts. But yeah, for better or for worse, we have been more focused on our own traumas, our own wounds. We've been more demanding empathy and understanding. So this has been, I think, a volatile energy since 2018. So now we're combining that with Mars in Gemini. I could see this going different ways. I mean, on the one hand, on the face of it, it looks destructive and volatile because Mars can be destructive and volatile, and Chiron is in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. So there's a lot of Mars energy. We're combining Mars energy with Chiron, which has to do with these sensitivities, and deep wounds and trauma, and then mixing that with Mars, which is the energy of battle and war. So, how do you think that would go? That sounds rough. That sounds volatile. Could have to do with people asking for understanding or empathy, but being so passionate about it that they come off violent or aggressive, and this, although they may have good intentions, this could lead to destruction or further misunderstanding or hurt or trauma. That's one way I could see this going. I can also look at this a different way, though. So we have to keep in mind sextile. We've had a lot of sextiles this week. So this is another sextile. Sextiles are harmonious aspects, like you'll hear me say over and over. And Mars is in Gemini, which is an air sign, so it is a little bit more detached, and it's focused on communication. It wants to speak its truth, but it also wants to hear the opinions of others. So I could also see this aspect bringing about a genuine curiosity and saying, this is my past. I want to be understood. I want to make my truth known, but I'm also willing to communicate in a productive way and listen as well. I could see it going that way too. Either way, it's a very kind of interesting aspect, and I think it does bring about, I think it brings up some kind of sore spots for different people, if that makes sense. And of course, as always, if you have placements around these planets, you'll experience this much more viscerally. So if you have placements around 13 degrees Gemini or 13 degrees Aries, this will directly impact you, probably more so than other people. I want to mention too, whenever we talk about Chiron aspects, I do think Chiron aspects and transits are experienced a little bit less strongly than any other planet, because Chiron is a planetoid. I don't know if it has to do with the size of the planet in astrology or how that works exactly, but I have noticed that although I do think Chiron aspects and transits are definitely noticeable and important to talk about, I just don't think that they're as tangible as the other planets, basically. So maybe just take this with a grain of salt. If you have placements around 13 degrees Aries or Gemini, this will definitely impact you. But if you don't have placements around there, you may not experience this as much, if that makes sense. Okay, and then lastly for Sunday, February 12th, moon continues through Scorpio. We're getting closer to that third quarter moon. In other words, we're getting closer to that moon square sun aspect. We'll definitely be experiencing it by Sunday, but we won't have that exact aspect until Monday. But I still want to talk about it, basically, because that's the main thing that's happening today. So we're getting into that kind of contentious energy, the restlessness, the anxiety, the stress. That's the, you could say the negative side of quarter moon energy. This one especially because Scorpio has a lot to do with themes like that anyway. It has to do with making a change, constant evolution. Scorpio is also kind of an agitated energy. It is a bit cynical, or negative maybe, or you could say realistic. So I think this energy does look like it could be very discomforting, especially if you're a person that is a little bit resistant to change. This will be difficult because this is demanding that we make change in some kind of area. You can always look to your chart to see where Scorpio falls in your chart, to see where you may need to make some kind of change in your life during this transit. But yeah, it can be very discomforting. But I always say, with quarter moon energy, it doesn't have to be discomforting, stressful, anxious, etc. It's just demanding change, basically. It's demanding for us to be active. So as long as you're being active in some kind of way or initiating some kind of change, you won't feel as stressed, I don't think. So I always say, if you've been waiting for a chance to initiate something or take the next step with something in your life, now would be an excellent time to do so. It could be something physical in nature, but third quarter moons also have a kind of cerebral or philosophical focus as well. So this could be a crisis of consciousness. That's kind of a phrase that's associated with third quarter moons. So making some kind of change could be a mental change or a shift in your perception, or it could literally be a physical change as well. And other than that, if you're thinking about it and there's really nothing in your life that you'd like to make a dramatic change to, or nothing you'd like to start or implement, if you could at least be physically active today, because I do think that helps to release some of that energy. In other words, this type of dynamic is wanting us to be active in some kind of way. So at the very least, like, go for a walk or something, do something to be active. That's what this energy is supporting. And again, I think this is very fitting for Scorpio. Scorpio likes to be active. It's very reactive, very active. It's ruled by Mars, so it wants that activity. It wants that change. Okay, but that's what I have for this week. So yeah, looks like an interesting week for sure. I forgot to say what to do for the weekend, because I like to try to do that if I can. But yeah, this weekend, it's kind of dominated by the sun in Aquarius, moon in Scorpio dynamic. So on the one hand, these energies are kind of pushing us to, get weird, do something unusual. Don't be afraid to speak your mind, even if you are maybe voicing a very unconventional opinion. That these energies are supportive of that. Be a little bit weird. We're all a little bit freaky or unusual in one way or another. With Sun in Aquarius and Moon in Scorpio, now is an excellent time to embrace that. You could also do some kind of activity. I just talked about that for Sunday, but really for the whole weekend, quarter moons make us restless. They make us more active. So on the one hand, you could go out and do something, but on the other hand, these energies are volatile. So if you don't like that, if you're more introverted, maybe just stay at home and have some of your own kind of like controlled activity or spontaneity. Does that make sense? That's what I kind of see for the weekend. But yeah, stay tuned next week. We'll finally get that exact third quarter moon on Monday. It already kind of flavors the whole weekend, but we'll get that exact quarter moon aspect on Monday. So we'll talk about that next week. Sun also moves into Pisces next week. I think that's pretty crazy. When I was doing my notes, I was like, wow, I can't believe Sun's already going to move into Pisces. So we're already going to enter that last trimester of winter and prepare for spring, basically. So that is definitely exciting. We'll talk a lot more about that next week. Yeah, but I hope this information helps you. Thank you for listening. If you do want a reading, hit me up. You can email me or check out my website, manic.mercurian.net. Okay, but thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week.